Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Workshop Meeting. The Council thanks you for being part of our city government. At workshop meetings, the Council discusses issues but takes no formal action, and no formal action is taken. The agenda packet is available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. Please note that the City Council meetings continue to be held remotely and may be accessed through GoToWebinar. This meeting is being also televised live on Pasco TV, channel 191, on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and also streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, and YouTube channel. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Through proclamation number 20-28, Governor Inslee extended a directive making temporary changes to the Open Public Meetings Act. These virtual meetings will continue until the OPMA restrictions are lifted. And lastly, the public may submit their comments and/or questions for items not on the agenda by contacting the city manager or city clerk or using the feedback form on the city's website. And once again, we have our sanitizer, we have our masks and our social distancing practices in place, and a lot of great things that we're doing here to ensure that we're safe and meeting all the requirements that we should to stay safe and adhere to the safety requirements. And with that, we'll start with a roll call.
Okay. Council members Alvarado.
Present.
Maloney.
Present.
Milne.
Present.
Roach.
Present.
Serrano.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Present.
And Mayor Martinez.
Here.
Great.
All right, thank you. Shall we all rise for the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you for that. Next, we'll go to item number 4, verbal reports from council members. Any of the council members have anything they'd like to report for the week?
I'll speak, Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, council member Serrano.
Today I attended the Hanford Area Economic Fund Advisory Committee where we discussed some of the loans that are outstanding, and obviously some of those folks that we've loaned money to. This is money coming from Hanford waste fees collected by the Department of Revenue, I believe. And, you know, trying to get that money out on the street where possible. Again, these are loans for businesses, not necessarily for PPE or COVID related, but specific to, you know, starting a business that might impact the Tri-Cities by bringing in new jobs. Obviously, some of our current loans are currently struggling to pay back the principal and the interest. So we're looking at trying to find ways to help these local businesses that have kind of started up and have been hit by COVID. So nothing too exciting, but, you know, we're trying to help the business community where we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Councilmember Maloney.
Yeah, last week I attended the Franklin County Emergency Management Board, and a lot of things going on with that, as they've been a central hub for helping our COVID response throughout the bi-counties here in Benton and Franklin counties. But one thing I learned was that they have distributed over 2.7 million items to help with the COVID response. So things from gloves, masks, full gowns, various other protective suits and such, hand sanitizer bottles, etc. Just all sorts of things to help keep especially our first responders and such safe as they're dealing with this pandemic. So lots of good things that group has done, has really been able to really help the community try to combat this. So I thought that number was absolutely astounding. I was blown away by that number. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with the group here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Roach, and just wanted to report that Hanford Communities had their board meeting last week. Went well. We got to have a kind of virtual meet and greet with the new Department of Ecology Nuclear Waste Program Manager David Bowen. And then we also discussed the 2021 issue agenda. And that's about it.
Thank you. Anyone else? If not, I attended the weekly continuity of operations meeting that we have on Fridays to get together with some of the local leaders and continue to communicate on where we're at with the pandemic and what kind of activities we're looking forward to. And obviously, I'm going to wait for our miscellaneous items to discuss some of the things that are going on over at the fairgrounds and the success that's going on there. Also, I unfortunately missed a meeting for the national parks, and Director Adam, I don't know if there's any immediate anything to come out of the meeting that you'd like to share with. If it's not important, we can pick up on that later. But other than that, it's business as usual. So thank you for that. Well, we'll get right into business and go into our next item for discussion tonight. We have the Washington State Department of Transportation presentation. And tonight, I'm going to turn this over to, would it be Rick White? Rick, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am. Thank you very much. And just very briefly, Washington State Department of Transportation is here tonight to provide a summary of the safety concerns with the at-grade crossing at US 12 and A Street. And also as a panelist tonight, we have Dan Ford, our city engineer, to help with all the technical assistance or issues that might come up. And again, with that, I'll just turn it over to the Department of Transportation for their presentation.
All right, Mr. Ford, are you on the line tonight?
Yes, I am. Can everybody hear me okay?
I can hear you now.
For whatever reason, I can't post a picture, so maybe that's to everybody else's benefit. But tonight, what we have is from Washington State Department of Transportation, Lisa Renee Skilperut, Troy Suing, and Paul Gonzeth with their presentation. So you folks take it away, please.
This is Lisa Renee Skilpert. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good evening.
Wonderful. So I don't think that I'm able to advance the slides. So I'll just let you know if that's okay to advance the slide.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So the intersection that we're talking about is US 12 and A Street, right where the star is, to the east before you get to the river crossing for Hood Park. Next slide. This is a real quick summary of the collision history from 2013 to 2017. Each number represents an individual crash. So as you can see, some of the movements from the left turning vehicles, it shows one set of arrows, but then the leader line leads you to a set of 6 numbers indicating that that location and that type of collision has happened 6 times over that 2013 to 2017 timeframe. So we saw a pattern here that mostly involved left turning movements from A Street onto westbound US 12. Next slide, please. This is just to familiarize everybody with what the configuration is currently. So you can see there's 2 through movements in each mainline direction. On A Street, you have a right turn acceleration lane that merges into mainline, and a left turn lane that also has its own acceleration lane onto westbound US 12. And then in the US 12 westbound direction, you have a left turn pocket onto A Street. In the eastbound direction, you have a right turn kind of slip lane there. And just for kind of a sense of the number of vehicles that we're seeing out there. AADT is average daily traffic. So in one given day, on average, we see 20,810 vehicles on main line in both directions. And those numbers come from 2018. So they may have slightly gone up in 2019, but definitely took a dive in 2020, but probably back up to where we were in 18 or 19 by now. And we haven't done what we call turning volume counts, where you actually count the number of right turns and left turns and whatnot in a couple of years. But based on the information that the historical information that we have, we're seeing probably about 100 vehicles in the PM peak hour, so the high volume hour, making that left movement that we're so concerned with. Next slide, please. So this would be the proposed alternative. So you can see that in the westbound, which would be to the left of the screen, or traveling left, we've hatched out the left turn acceleration lane. And on A Street, we are closing off the approach that would allow you to make a left. And the only movement available would be to turn right on that free right acceleration. And we would utilize tubular markers, so you'd actually see a physical barrier that would help you to make the right-hand turn. We're proposing to leave the left-hand turn from westbound US 12 onto A Street. Next slide, please. So if we were to remove that left turn, you know, we still want people to be able to get where they had intended to go. So you can see the yellow path would be our proposed detour, if you will. Those that are no longer able to make a left onto US 12 at A Street could go up to the interchange to the north and still have access to US 12. Next slide, please. Or is that, oh, that's the end. So I don't know if you want to take questions now or.
Sure, I'll ask a question. I mean, so what exactly is the mileage on the detour? And I mean, are there any other options? It seems pretty significant of a change.
So I do actually, we did put together a report, and I believe that it was an extra 2 to 3 minutes of travel time for those. Like I said, it's a fairly relatively low volume. So when you take a look at you might want to go back to the collision history slide, which I believe is number 3. So for the number of collisions that we're seeing contributed, or that are from those low volumes, the number of collisions per vehicle trying to make a left, you know, if you were to kind of make that comparison, the number of vehicles making a movement compared to the number of collisions that are associated with that movement, it's a very high ratio. And so when you're taking into account the high speeds on this facility, the high number of collisions, and the low volume, this is an appropriate mitigation, short-term or quickly implemented mitigation. Does not mean that that is the only thing that will ever be done at this intersection. It just means this is the mitigation that we would like to propose for the foreseeable future.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I think that's something we'll definitely need to consider, the fact that this is kind of step one of potentially several, or at least one of two in the future. I'll certainly have more questions, I think, but I'll let other people speak at this time. Thank you.
I just want to be clear. This is Saul, and thank you for this presentation. So you're basically gonna, if you're on the freeway and you're heading towards Pasco or towards it would be westbound, we're gonna leave that left turn, but just eliminate the left turn that goes from A Street westbound on the freeway. That's correct. Is that correct?
Yes, we're only proposing to eliminate one movement. So if you're heading westbound on US 12, you're still able to make the left onto A Street.
Yeah, okay. So, and I apologize if I missed this, but were most of the accidents from those vehicles, or were they all from those vehicles making the left turn to go westbound on the freeway?
Well, on the collision history, you can see that. Can we go back to that slide? Sorry. Thank you. So you can see that there's an arrow that shows somebody coming from A Street and then somebody on US 12 colliding. And there's 6 of them, number 1, 7, 8, 10, 14, 15. That just helps us figure out which collision it's associated with in our report. And we assume that that is due to a poor gap choice, meaning somebody that wanted to make a left thought they had enough space to make that left before mainline traffic made it to the intersection, and they were not right. And it's hard to judge gaps at 60 miles an hour. So we think that's one of the contributing factors is poor gap choice.
Yeah. Well, in my experience, because I've used that quite frequently, I got to tell you that I have personally, when I've had events at the Cohesion Cafe, and after I speak, I would like to hear from Councilmember Alvarado, because I've always made it a point to go. It would be like west on A Street, and go over the Colotes Highway intersection and head back west because of that intersection. I think it's a valid mitigation. I guess I would really. I know there's several big businesses in that area on A Street, and it would be. I guess it would be nice if we can somehow get their take on how much they would use that. And, I would almost venture to say that they probably would rather have their employees go up to the Colotes intersection because it's a lot safer for them, and, being employees and concerned for their workers. So appreciate the presentation. I think that mitigation is valid, as much as it might take a little more time to go to the other intersection to get onto the freeway safely, but I think it would really, really be a lot safer to go this route. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your time.
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, Councilmember Alvarado, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. This is certainly hits close to home. I have personal friends who have been in accidents here, and so I think that there's, really trying to balance two things, which is safety and access. There's folks who use this thoroughfare on a daily basis, and including my wife who commutes to Walla Walla, and so obviously there's a lot of personal concerns that I would have, but I guess I have a couple of questions. My first one is from a matter of engagement. I know that WSDOT has been doing a really good job in recent history and as far as engaging folks, and certainly has done so in the 395 interventions that have happened. I'm just curious what that intervention for this specific or the engagement for this specific site has been like, and what you've been hearing from the community, if so.
Well, we've reached out mostly to political parties at this point, and we wanted to talk with this group before we had our open house. And so our next step is to not only talk with the businesses that would be impacted by this, but also have an open house, which we would do online. That's been the format that we've used this in 2020, and it's been, I think, really well received. So that's the plan for this project.
Yeah, we would love to be able to pass that word on to our community. I know that when it comes to things that affect them on a daily basis, kind of issues, they're very excited to be a part of the process. So we'll look forward to some of that opportunity for public engagement. The second question I have is perhaps from a long-term mitigation. Obviously, we don't know what funding looks like. But I do have concern as our area is continuing to grow pretty dramatically, and the demand for housing and business we're really seeing a boom in the east side of Pasco. To take away access definitely is something that would create more traffic and things of that nature. From a long-term perspective, is there any long-term mitigation that WSDOT has tossed around or considered, or that things that we can look forward to in the future?
So this was specifically came about from a safety review standpoint, but this does not preclude any future projects that will be considered at this location. So I guess I don't know if Troy Suing or Paul Gunseth want to speak more to that, but this is specifically getting at the safety concern, and we will be monitoring any area that's growing at the rate this location is growing. We will continue to monitor it and make changes as needed.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I'd be interested to seeing if the school district, how they would be impacted, and also different services, police, fire, trash collection, things like that. If this is something that impacts them significantly or not, I don't know the answer to that question, but I certainly know that would be a matter of concern. Thank you.
This is Troy Suing. This is Councilman Alvarado. Just to answer your question too, as far as long-term type improvements here, yeah. As you know, and probably you've heard definitely through the MPOs, we're really right now concentrating on just preservation and maintenance of the highways and doing low-cost type safety improvements that we can. And we see this as definitely a low-cost, high impactful, actually be a great improvement, I think, as far as safety goes. And so these are the type of improvements that we're looking for right now. Long-term, it's really hard to say, like you said, as far as any funding. And we would definitely be looking at a partnership with the city and partnership with local development as well to look at any future improvements in this area. So.
Thank you, Mr. Suing. I appreciate that. I think there's definitely a business interest in, wanting to know what the mitigation would look like. I think if anyone wanting to develop this area would want to know, hey, am I paying? Who's paying into this? I know that there's one specific business that has been impacted by this, and so I do work for this agency, but they're also a constituent. So wearing a different hat, I certainly feel for their desire to know what is it that they're committing to. I know from a perspective of politics, I know WSDOT is really wanting to be the agency that dictates what the different projects are, but not knowing the future really makes us as council members really want to engage in a political going to Olympia and trying to lobby for projects. And I know that there's obviously some conversations and needing to be a little bit more aligned. So I look forward to having more conversations about this.
All right.
And Mr. Mayor, may I offer a point of interest? This is Rick White, sorry.
Yes, go ahead, Director White.
Thank you. City Manager Zabel last week sent council a legislative handout that Dan Ford, our city engineer, developed. And it does speak to perhaps Mr. Alvarado's concerns about the long-term potential for solutions to this problem. And it involves a future future interchange further east on US 12. And I believe that is the very last slide in your agenda packet tonight. And if council's has specific questions about that, I think Dan Ford, our city engineer, can offer some assistance in that regard.
I certainly have questions about that one, but I'll let other council members speak.
Right, anyone else?
This is Councilmember Roach, and I just had one question about the option for mitigation and what was what was the thinking behind only limiting the left-hand turn versus just eliminating the turn altogether? And then the follow-up question is wanting to know when the last study was done on the turns, how many turns were taken at this intersection?
So are you asking why were we just doing the left-hand turn as opposed to the entire roadway connection to US 12?
Yes, why not eliminate even the turning onto A Street?
Well, we looked at the patterns, and as you can see, I don't know how big the numbers are on your screen, but number 5, I believe, is and number 12 are the only two associated with the left-hand turn from US 12 onto A Street, as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 that are associated with the left-hand turn from A Street onto US 12. So there's a higher volume that makes the left turn onto A Street and a much lower collision rate. So the benefit cost of having that larger number of vehicles move to another location, either Tank Farm or Colotis, versus the number of collisions that they've had, didn't make sense. But removing the lower volume left-hand turn from A Street onto US 12 with the high volume, a high collision rate and low volume did pencil out. And the last, it was 2013, and I believe the number was 60 vehicles in the PM peak hour. So using some growth rates and assumptions for development that's happened since then, we came up with about 100 vehicles turning left in the PM peak hour, not the whole day.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, this is City Engineer Dan Ford. Might I add a little bit to the conversation?
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Ford.
And for everyone, I apologize. I thought I was having computer issues earlier, but Rick White, Director White had pointed out the handout, and that is a handout, a legislative handout that we did start discussions with WSDOT some time ago. And you might remember as well me bringing this up and this being part of the 6-year transportation plan, discussions of not only A Street, but Tank Farm Road, which has been mentioned as well. and the possibilities of working with WSDOT at these at-grade crossings and the concerns at these at-grade crossings. And I think as you've all touched on it, the bigger concern obviously is what does this do to development? And I can share with you that there is a number of developers looking at these properties along A, and each one of these will obviously be impacted as to their accessibility. To that end, I've been working with city staff to prepare those legislative handouts. And what that legislative handout that you have in front of you is a possible consideration for a practical solution, getting us to the point where there might be some type of solution to solve this problem and get us access back. So you might remember us discussing a possible interchange at some point in between these two, 8th Street and Tank Farm Road. And I was able to find that, and I believe it was from 2009. I could be wrong on the date, but that was a WSDOT handout back at that time, and that's how this legislative handout was prepared. And we have also, what you'll see on there is a possible first step or practical solution, which might be the consideration of a roundabout at this location, which would provide local access at that point. And again, just be kind of a first step practical solution that has been suggested. So I just wanted to give a little background history onto the handout and point out the concerns that we have from a development standpoint, and you know, give you some background as to kind of where some of this information had come from. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Oh, go ahead. Somebody wanted to talk?
Yeah, this is Councilman Alvarado. I just have a question about the legislative agenda.
Okay, go ahead.
Obviously, you know, this has a little bit of history, but I think it seems to be a little bit more solidified on Tank Farm Road, and I'm wondering if the rationale for that is because of ridership of industrial ridership or number of trips, and also safety. I'm just curious how that came about to kind of focus more on Tank Farm versus 8.
Who could answer that question?
This is City Engineer Dan Ford. I honestly, I think it might be the other way around. So the focus here is obviously on A and not on Tank Farm. I do think that there obviously will be some consideration of Tank Farm that will probably follow along these guidelines. So this is probably the beginning of the impacts and the mitigations associated with these at-grade crossings. So that's our biggest concern.
Yeah, I think I was referring to the proposal to our legislators, our legislator agenda to ask for funding for Tank Farm Road improvements.
Yeah, it's actually a location, a midpoint between the two. And it's actually to take into account both at-grade crossings at some point. And again, this was something that was shared with me not too long ago, that there was actually an interchange discussed and proposed, or at least talked about, back some time ago, midpoint between the two at-grade crossings. And so we've taken that information and kind of extrapolated a possible practical solution that we're looking to go after possible transportation monies to achieve.
Thank you.
If I could add, Councilmember Alvarado, this is Dave Zabel, the city manager. So what you're seeing in that drawing or rendering is basically that was a early Department of Transportation rendering from probably more than a dozen years ago. We don't have anything else at this point. So but I believe that location is probably more symbolic than it is accurate. I mean, it certainly could slide to the west. I don't think the intent is to focus it necessarily on A or Tank Farm. It's really kind of, I think it was intended as a solution to address, at least in part, one of the concerns that's brought up and was shared with council tonight from DOT staff. So it's that left turn and those at-grade crossings of the highway. So obviously an interchange at that location, grade separated interchange at that location would resolve, if properly connected, it would resolve those safety concerns at both A Street and the Tank Ford Road intersections. And as I said, where that's located on there, I think was just the draft person that put it together at the time. I don't know that there's any consideration one way or the other. You know, from an environmental standpoint, probably should go a little bit further away from the river. But beyond that, that's I think there's a lot of flexibility when we get down to really developing or designing that ultimate solution.
Thank you, Mr. Saber. That's very helpful. I would definitely would hope that there be some study on analysis on traffic and how the impacts would be. I mean, before we move forward, something like that. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. And Mrs. Kilperu, are you still on the line?
Yes.
Okay. You were talking earlier about seeing, what the thoughts were here, and then you were going to move out to do some more outreach. Is that a true statement?
Yes, our next step is to do an open house, an online open house.
Okay, is there any, well, I guess I would just like to suggest that you meet with the city staff and city manager prior to the outreach, just to ensure that you kind of have all the ducks in a row. And that would be just my last comment, just to make sure that that we're on the same page before we move it further into the process, if we could, please.
Okay, thank you for your input.
All right, thank you. All right, well, thank you, council, and thank you, representatives from the Washington State Department of Transportation, Director White and Mr. Danford. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Next, we'll move right on to the next item for DKS presentation, the road on Road 68 and Burton signage striping project. And we'll go with Director Worley. Are you on the line tonight?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Steve Worley, Public Works Director. Tonight, we're going to present to council some information about a potential change in traffic as well. This one is related to some of the congestion that we see at Burton Boulevard and Road 68. As council is aware, there has been a lot of improvements over the years related to traffic in that corridor. And more recently, there have been several projects that staff has brought to council to try to continue to improve the traffic flow in that area. Some of the projects that you may recall include the Wrigley Drive extension, which recently came to council for a bid award. And that project is going to get started here in about a month or two. The road widening south of I-182 is another project that is going to be coming to you shortly, and we'll be going out to bid and construction in the spring. That is anticipated to help relieve some of the congestion there as well. And one of the other projects that came to council for approval was the signage and striping project at Road 68 in Burton. And this is a project that will improve some of the lane configurations and some of the signage to give better clarity and better use of the lanes out there so that people know which lanes to get into to get onto I-182 in either direction. As part of that project, we had an opportunity to consider addressing a potential safety issue. And that safety issue is related to the left turns from eastbound Burton Boulevard onto Clemente Drive. And tonight's presentation, our consultant from DKS, Brian Chandler, is going to walk through what the issues are related to that left turn are and what the possible recommendation might be to help alleviate that. And the idea would be that if council is in favor of it, then we could amend the signage and striping contract to make this change as part of that project. So with that introduction, I'll turn it over to Brian Chandler and have him give you the information related to this particular turning movement on Burton Boulevard.
All right. Thank you, Steve. And good evening, everyone. Is my audio coming through okay?
It is. Good evening, Mr. Chandler.
Fantastic. Hey, everyone. Great to be with you again. I'm seeing my video is not working, so you'll just get my voice this evening. So, yeah, I think we'll jump right in. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. We're going to just talk very briefly this evening about the existing conditions at Burton and Clemente. I'm sure most, if all of you, are pretty familiar with this location. Talk a little bit about the safety challenges that we've identified and also some challenges to traffic operation, particularly at Road 68. And then a proposed alternative, what that would look like, how we would deal with kind of the ramifications of that. So we'll go ahead and do that. So next slide, please. This is the study intersection. Again, you all live here, so you know where this is. Let's go to the next slide. At Clemente Lane and Burton Boulevard, this is just east of the Road 68 intersection, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. It's one of the, maybe the busiest or one of the busiest intersections in the city. And east of there, then just east of there is Clemente Lane. To the east of this intersection would be Convention Place. You see you're kind of placed between those two signalized intersections. As you can see here, the current configuration, we've got dual left turns at Road 68. And there's an eastbound left turn that goes into Clemente Lane. And then besides that, we've got, right in, right out for both the northern intersection there, entrance, and then the south part as well. So the study intersection we'll be looking at right here is right at Clemente Lane. The red markings you can see on this image here are raised curb, which will be a little more clear on the next slide. Go ahead. This is a photo just showing now, looking eastbound at Burton Boulevard. That little sedan there is making the left turn at Clemente Lane. You can see the other vehicles there as well. And you can see both on kind of the middle of the screen, there's a yellow curb showing the difference in the two travel directions. And then a little bit to the right of that, there's a raised white curb that separates that left turn, but is providing indication of the two vehicles going in the same direction. Next slide. So the issues that we're really coming up with here are twofold. We've got a westbound left turn still back or queuing that goes back from Road 68. I'm sure many of you or all of you have experienced this at one time or another. And it exceeds the capacity of the left turn lanes. The inside length of that turn lane is about 350 feet. And the actual model queue length is very long, more than a half mile. So it goes way back, still past Clemente Lane, into Convention Place at certain times of day, especially the PM, the highest of the PM peak. And so a question related to that is kind of why, what is the issue here? What's the reason? Why does this happen? Besides just there's a lot of cars. So if we go to the next slide. One of the reasons is what happens after people turn left. So actually, after folks turn left to go south on Road 68, most of them are getting on the freeway. And when they get on the freeway, they need to be in the right lane heading southbound, whether they're going west on the freeway, which is about 49% or half the traffic, or if they're going east on the freeway, they still have to be in the right lane going south to take the loop ramp. So 81% of drivers that are taking that westbound left turn are getting onto the freeway, and to do so, they need to take a right. So that is clogging things up a little bit at Road 68. Ideally, we like to have half of our left turn drivers in each of the left turn lanes, right? That would be perfect operations. In this case, we're quite a bit far from that. You can see in the AM peak for that westbound left turn lane, more than twice as many people are using the outside lane as the inside lane to make their left turn. And then the PM peak, it's similar, not quite the same, but you can see still almost twice as many people are using the outside lane as the inside lane, which causes some issues in clogging up both those lanes. Then you've got left turners and through movements kind of backing back up into Clemente Lane and then all the way back into Convention Place. If you go to the next slide. One of the ramifications of that is we end up with crashes. So this is a crash history of a recent 5-year period at Clemente Lane. You can see here we've got 8 eastbound vehicles involved in crashes, 20 that involve westbound vehicles, and then you can see a little bit on the southbound and other. A lot of this the westbound crashes, many of these are rear end crashes, and we're convinced it's a little tricky until you get into the narratives of each event, but I'm convinced that a number of these crashes are occurring because of both the queuing, of course, and because of this eastbound left turn. We've all been in a situation where we're trying to make that left turn across 2 lanes of traffic or more, and people wave us on, like in the near lane, and then you make that left, and then, oh no, I didn't see the traffic on the far lane that isn't stopped or doesn't see me and isn't queued. And so some of the crashes are happening because of that, and just the various other just confusion and complication that happens because of this eastbound left turn. Next slide. So as Stephen mentioned, there is a project starting up later this spring that's going to add some signing and pavement marking. This zoom in here is just east of Clemente Lane, so just kind of move your brain to the right a little bit on the map. On the far right of this image, you can see a sign truss. It's a little hard to tell. It's a design image of a sign truss that has signing that matches the same images that you see on the pavement. Though that marking is going to actually go on the pavement itself. And so you'll see that as you're driving westbound on Burton, you'll see information directing folks to the lane we want them to be in as they're approaching Road 68 to go south towards the interstate. Next slide. The other change that's going to be happening this spring is, you can see this is just, it's literally a restriping. It's just restriping how we're taking people to the intersection and then taking them southbound to go onto Road 68. But it's changing so that these 2 left turn lanes are the primary movement. They are the primary movement at that intersection. They have the most volume. And so treating them that way, by instead of packing them into their little left turn lanes like we saw at the beginning, they are the flow all the way from Convention Place intersection all the way west towards Road 68. And you can see at the top there, there's a number 3,000 before. Just this striping and signing package that we're putting together later this year is going to reduce that queue quite a bit. It's still really long. It's still problematic. Signing and striping can't solve a large PMP queuing problem, but it is making a significant difference. And so what happens here is if you want to be a right turner or a through movement at Road 68 heading westbound towards that intersection, you need to essentially get out of the main lanes. You are now the turning movement. Next slide. So now to the good stuff. The actual proposed change for this evening is to remove the eastbound left turn. We would not allow that eastbound left turn movement onto Clemente Lane. We would extend the westbound curb, so now there would be curbing all the way from Road 68 to the existing median. The existing median is already curbed, and so it would stay curbed all the way to Convention Place. And then one more slide, please. This is what the restriping would look like. So if we combine the restripe that we already talked about a few slides ago, and then we remove the eastbound left turn lane there at Clemente, you're going to get another 200 feet of westbound left turn for the inside. And the primary benefit of this is safety. You know, I've spoken in front of you before a number of times over the last year or two, and that's always been as a safety engineer. I'm in front of you this evening as a safety engineer. So the main reason that we're looking at this and considering it is because of those 35 crashes that have occurred over a 5-year period, and that changing this situation by removing the eastbound right turn reduces the potential for conflicts, therefore reduces the risk of collision. There is a secondary benefit of improving the operations. As I mentioned, the PM peak is still going to be a problem. This isn't going to magically solve all the traffic that's flowing westbound that wants to go south towards the interstate. But what it will do is other times a day, there's these kind of near peaks, like a little bit before, maybe 4:45 or 6:30, where you're outside the main PM peak. Some of the times in the AM peak, or even those weird random times of day where things are just backed up and you're not sure why, those aren't going to be nearly as bad as they were before. And this is going to provide significant benefit in those kind of medium times. Not the free flow times, they're fine anyway. The worst of the worst PM peak for this left turn is still going to be a problem. But those other times in the middle are going to be helped significantly by making these changes for that westbound left turn, alongside, again, the primary benefit of safety. Then the last thing we need to deal with is, hey, if we're removing this eastbound left turn lane, we need to do something about that. And so if you look at the next slide, we need to still be sure that folks can get to the location they need to go. So if you look right in the middle bottom of the screen, that's the intersection that we're dealing with. That's the eastbound left turn right in the middle that we're going to disallow. And if we were to do that, then we need to look at the other ways that folks can get where they need to go. So the couple options on the east side are a eastbound U-turn to then get back to Clemente. All the right turns in and out are going to continue to be allowed at Clemente Lane. Drivers can take a left turn at Convention Place and then take a left into the property. And then on the west side, you can see, if you think about drivers as they're coming either from the south or from the west, that instead of going through the intersection and then taking the left at Clemente Lane, eastbound drivers will instead need to take a left at the signal and then take a right at one of the entrances into the property, depending on where they're going. And then similarly, for a northbound driver coming from the south, instead of taking a right turn and then taking a left at Clemente Lane, they'll need to, either they can go straight, take one of those three entrances to take a right onto the property, or they could take a right and then take one of those U-turn or the left, as mentioned before. So number of access points, it's a relatively small number. The highest number in the peak hour was about 50 vehicles that were currently, or from the most recent count, were making that eastbound left. And so they very much can be accommodated without too much trouble by some minor changes to the adjacent signal.
Mr. Chandler?
So with that, yes, please.
Yeah. I'm sorry, was that the end of your presentation?
Yeah, I was gonna hand it and just check and see if Steve had any questions or comments. Also, I believe Maria is on the line.
Okay.
See if she had anything. I've worked with both Steve and Maria in the last couple of weeks to put this together. It's just wanted them to have a shot of anything you want to add or anything I might have misspoken about before we get a question.
Yes, this is Steve Worley. Mr. Mayor, one last comment I wanted to make is that if the council is in favor of taking this approach, one of the next steps that we would do is to reach out to the business owners in and around this area and kind of gauge their feeling about making this change. We didn't want to do that until we knew how council felt about it. And so depending on the discussion that we have here tonight, that's the next step we would take if we decide to move this thing forward. So with that, we'd be happy to answer questions from council members about this proposal.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and take the first shot at it because I believe if anybody takes these roads more than I do, I'd be surprised. And I know these roads very well. If you can go ahead and bring up that slide, that last slide, if you would, please. So I am in favor, and I agree that there's a safety concern on Clement Road there, or Clement Lane. But the biggest concern, as a matter of fact, I did this, I believe it was this weekend. I was actually looking at this, and I went by there. And I do believe it would improve everything that was explained here tonight. It would be safer if we did that. But I am glad you would go and reach out to the business owners to see what they felt about it. But just as important, if we can get this to happen, it is very important that on this, once you take a left on Convention Drive there, and then you take that left, and I don't know if that's a street or just a back alley. Mr. Worley, is there a road, a street name for that? The road?
There is not.
Okay.
I believe that is a driveway access to those businesses right between the theater and that other building there.
Yes.
It is not a public street.
Well, I can guarantee you that road, it's already used very, very much. It's not striped. I'm really confident that it's going to cause a safety concern there, because that road is used at a very high rate, and I think that, again, I know it's a safety, it would be a safety and improvement, and it would make the traffic flow better, but I can guarantee you that that road right there is going to get even busier than what it is now, and I would highly suggest that we would have to make accommodations to that driveway road, because it's gonna double or triple in traffic, and I already see a potential for safety issues going on there as well. So I'd hate to just eliminate one safety one and then, open up another one. So I would really highly suggest that we look into that and do what we have to do for that driveway road, because it's going to be utilized significantly more, and we have to keep the best access we can for those businesses that are going to be affected by eliminating this left turn. But again, I would want us to really research that and see what we can do about that road, because I know it's going to be an issue when or if this happens.
We can certainly look into that.
I can already tell you that I see cars. I support and I attend those businesses that are there, and I see quite frequently that cars actually go from the Circle K and they drive through the dugout parking lot to get to the other businesses, and so there's a lot of weaving and traffic going where they shouldn't go there already. So again, I just wanted us to make sure that if or when we make this change, we have to prepare for making that driveway a little bit safer for our vehicle traffic, because it's going to get the traffic there is going to be increased dramatically. That would be my opinion. So if you could just look into that, I would greatly appreciate that, and I will go ahead and open it up to any other council members.
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Go ahead, Councilmember Maloney.
I would like to 100% echo Mr. Martinez's concerns there. For example, I think it was last week, my wife was stopping off to get broochies, and that left turn there she chose not to take it because it was backed up and looked very dangerous. There's already some people queued to take a left onto Clemente from Burton, and so she chose to go up to Convention, took a left there, and then took exactly that unmarked driveway there to get over to Brucci's. And she said there was 20 plus cars coming through, his constant stream of traffic already, and her even just trying to take a left from there into Brucci's wasn't the simplest thing in the world, and that's with the current configuration today. So I can't emphasize enough that I think Mr. Martinez has it right on the head there, that we need to take some ownership of the traffic flow through here. When you look at every one of these turns into this area to get to Clemente from here, every single one of those is a really poor driveway access that we're trying to use to get there. Private driveways, private parking lots and such. That doesn't seem like a long-term right answer for us to be closing access to a street and then saying, hey, just drive through parking lots to get to the businesses. So I mean, just taking a glance at this slide, I think really highlights that issue that we have. I know there's no easy answer to this, and so I'm interested in that long-term fix. I'm interested in closing Clemente, that left turn to Clemente, because I believe it will improve safety. I believe it will improve traffic flow, but we need to follow it very quickly with a more long-term solution. Maybe that's buying out that private driveway and bringing it up to city standards in terms of a street with the correct signage and striping. Maybe it's something entirely different. I won't presume, but that will need to be fixed, I believe. And in the not too distant future, or we need to tie the two together and delay the closing of this until we've come up with an adequate solution there. So thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. And if I may, I have one more comment, Mr. Worley. the U-turn, the proposed yellow U-turn from going eastbound and then, making the U-turn to head back to Clemente Lane. I have seen multiple times that cars they either don't turn sharp enough or I don't know what the case is, but that there's not enough space there to make the U-turn, and cars will have to back up into, because they don't make the turn and then drive forward and potentially cause accidents there as well. So I just wanted to bring that point up. I forgot to do that earlier, so thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Go ahead, Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe there's a light at Convention Place, and if so, sorry, I do also want to say I do agree with the comments made before. I would be concerned, if I were the property owner, to have, be responsible for fixing any increase, like the impacts of increased traffic on the property. But anyway, my comment is, if there is a light for the left turn, I'm wondering if there's any changes to the timing of allowable time to make a left turn. I know that some of these lights turn pretty quickly in some of our intersections, and I'm wondering if that was also part of the fix to give folks that are making a left turn on 68 Place a little bit more time. I know people tend to start running red lights when they get impatient because they can't make that left. I don't know if that was also part of the study.
Yes, that is one of the areas that we would look at as well if we were to move forward with the elimination of that left turn pocket on the Clemente, is looking at the timing of that signal to give more green time for that left turn.
Perfect.
Yeah, Steve, I'll just add to, it's a good question. We actually did model that during this study a week and a half ago. I had our guys go ahead and take a look at that just to be sure we had enough time in the other phases that we could borrow from, and it's fine. We'll be able to provide the same overall level of service by taking a little bit more time and giving it to that eastbound left turn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that was considered. I've been in one fender bender in my time here in the Tri-Cities, and it was at this place. So I certainly know that's an issue.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. Anyone else? All right, then, Mr. Worley, can you take that and see what we can do to make those improvements? I appreciate your presentation.
Thank you very much. I think we heard loud and clear.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, Council. Next, we'll move right on to our next item, which is the Pasco Fire Department Strategic Plan Update, and we all received a packet. So, Mr. Chief Bob Gear, are you on the line tonight?
I am, Mayor. Can you copy me?
I do. I'm surprised you're here because you had quite a busy day today, didn't you?
We certainly did, and we'll talk about that in council discussion. But yeah, tonight we're happy to be here to present our updated strategic plan. Our last strategic plan was in 2017. We re-engaged the same company, ESCI, Emergency Services Consulting International, and had the same project manager, Don Bivens. And Mr. Bivens will be presenting the plan. And I want to give credit to Captain that we actually moved up for a 4-month detailed acting battalion chief that worked with Mr. Bivens to develop the plan. Garrett Jenks did an excellent job, and I think we have a really good document. I think it's an interesting plan compared to the last time we did it. It seemed the last strategic plan focused more on external issues, I think, and this one seems to focus more internally, but I don't want to take Mr. Bivens' thunder away, so with that, I'll turn it over to him.
Thank you, Chief. This is Don Bivens. Mayor and Council, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I don't know if maybe it is coming in a little bold. I don't know if you're really close to the speaker or not, but let's try it again.
Okay, I'll back up a little bit. Is this better?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it's been my pleasure to work with Pasco Fire Department yet again. Enjoy my time with an organization that's very focused on providing a quality service to the community. And so I'll provide a quick overview of the document that you all have, and then leave time for any questions that you'd like to get into. Next slide, please. So our approach to strategic planning is first and foremost to provide a survey to all of the members of the organization to get a sense of where they believe the organization is at, where the issues are, and what's going well. So we performed that on the front end of this process. Then we engaged assisting agencies, the fire departments that immediately surround the Pasco Fire Department. We did that virtually. We met with 8 fire chiefs in the area to identify the issues from their perspectives. Then we followed up with a virtual session with citizens. We identified the types of citizens that should be involved in this forum. It's really intended to just be a slice of the community to get some perspectives on the priorities from their perspective. And then armed with all of that information, we facilitate a 2-day workshop with internal personnel from Pasco Fire Department to develop all the elements that you see in the bullet below that. Next slide, please. So the assisting agency forum participants are listed here. They are, I can't tell you which agencies they're from. I relied on the fire department to contact those agencies that they most interact with, but this is the list of the folks who provided us with feedback. Next slide, please. The major takeaways from I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. The major takeaways from the forum with the assisting agencies is that the Pasco Fire Department is a great partner for all the agencies immediately surrounding them, and is viewed as a regional leader. In fact, chiefs were indicating pretty much as Pasco Fire goes, so goes the rest of the region. And I don't know that that's a unanimous belief, but that was expressed by several fire chiefs that participated. They also identified that coordinating resources regionally is a strength of the Pasco Fire Department, and they used examples of combining special operations efforts, developing a regional approach to training, sharing the training center, developing overhead team support for in-region responses where agencies don't have the resources that maybe Pasco Fire might or other agencies might, and that the automatic aid agreements that the region enjoys could probably be strengthened by being formalized. Next slide. The most exciting part for me with the assisting agencies is the desire for the region, the fire chiefs from the region, to work with Pasco Fire in developing some long-range fire service regional plans. They felt that operational issues are best handled by the deputy chiefs, but that the fire chiefs should be focusing on long-range planning within the region, and that they should identify elements and initiatives in that plan and develop a workflow from that. And they should also engage with the city managers to add credibility to the process, bring in the city managers' perspectives on long-range planning and issues related to the fire service in the region. And that in doing that, the planning effort is more specific, more targeted, more accurate, and also reflects the position and the perspectives of the elected and appointed officials. And as one fire chief commented, we must ensure the future we want instead of dealing with the future we get, which I thought was a notable quote to include. Next slide, please. So after the assisting agency forum, we had a citizen forum. We had 20 members of the community attend. It was a very robust group of folks who had, there were no shrinking violets in the group. Everyone had opinions and were very happy to express them and engaged in a very constructive way. So these are the folks who attended that session. Next slide, please. We provided them, in particular, the fire chief provided them an overview of the Pasco Fire Department and some of the issues that they faced. Once the chief provided them with some ground truth about the Pasco Fire Department and serving the city of Pasco from a fire service perspective, the SCI provided them with some regional and national standards for service delivery to help them understand Pasco Fire Department's ability to provide service in a national or regional context. The first series of questions we asked were on planning priorities. We listed essentially training, response time, facilities and equipment, cost, and whether all of the services that the community needs are currently being provided. We listed all of those issues for the citizens, and we gave them a forced choice. They had to compare each of these elements against all of the other elements. The highest score that any particular element could get by an individual is 6. The lowest, obviously, is 1. You would have to ultimately have one that's in last place. And this graph shows the combined average of all of the 20 participants, showing that technical competence, meaning training, is their highest priority, followed in second place with improving response time performance, and then very shortly behind that, maintaining response time. The least important planning priority from their perspective was expanding the services provided by the fire department. And they did provide some comments with regard to what those services might be. They're really not services more than they are programs that could be implemented. Next slide, please. After we asked about the planning priorities, we asked about the service priorities. We listed all of the major services that the fire department provides and asked them to rate them. A 3 rating is a critical priority, a 2 rating is an important priority, and a 3 rating, or excuse me, a 1 rating is a low priority. So in this case, 3 is the highest score for any of these services. EMS was far and away the highest priority service the department provides. Hazardous materials was a surprising second, at least surprising to me. Fire suppression 3rd, normally it would be fire suppression 2nd. And then community risk reduction, special or technical rescue, and aircraft firefighting are kind of bunched in the bottom group. They're all still important priorities. None of them were low priorities, but they were nonetheless low relative to the top. Next slide. We asked the attendees to express their opinions on the staffing levels of the fire department. And as you can see, the majority of the group felt that the staffing levels were appropriate. If they didn't feel it was appropriate, they tended toward understaffing as opposed to overstaffing. Next slide. We asked about response performance. Again, the majority felt that the response was appropriate, with a small minority identifying that the response was too slow, and an even smaller minority that felt that the response was too heavy. We assume that nobody's going to say it's too fast. So we couch it in terms of being heavy by the number of vehicles that are sent to what appears to be a minor response. Next slide. And then finally, we asked them about the cost of service. They are told what the fire department's budget is relative to the city's budget. And again, the majority here felt that the funding was appropriate, although at a much lower level than the previous two questions. If they don't feel that it's appropriately funded, they tend to lean toward the underfunded portion, adopting new fiscal tools, and a very small minority felt that the cost was too expensive. Next slide. We made sure that the mission statement that the fire department had adopted in its 2017 strategic plan was still in effect, and from their perspective it was. So there's no change to the mission statement, which is listed here. Next slide. The vision statement, they made some minor modifications to. Ultimately, the first bullet, focusing on a high quality, high qualified workforce grounded in humility, integrity, and respect for all cultures. There seemed to be a strong ethic by the work group that I was working with, that it's important to respect all the cultures that are served, and that there is more that can be done and should be done by the Pasco Fire Department to serve all cultures and all communities within the city of Pasco. Next slide. Finally, we asked them to provide for us the core values. And let me give you a little bit of background. The mission is why an organization exists. The vision statement is where you want to go. The core values is how you're going to treat each other getting there, how you're going to treat each other on the journey from where you are to where you want to go. And this is the values. This is a list of the values that this group provided to us. It is surprising to me, as a consultant, having done this in many communities, that universal accountability and ownership was a top priority by the group. Rarely do we get internal members of an organization wanting increased accountability and ownership, which tells me that the group is actually very mature and very self-aware. Next slide. From the internal SWOT analysis that we did, the survey that we conducted before we actually did the two-day session, we asked them, all members of the organization, to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats from their perspective that the Pasco Fire Department faces. In the strengths section here, these are the top elements. All of the responses are in the back of the strategic plan as an appendix, but the highlights are in this and the next three slides. And not surprising, they believe that it's the people of the Pasco Fire Department that are its strengths, followed by skills and community engagement. Next slide. Weaknesses, again, there's the accountability word. A a strong desire to strengthen accountability within the organization, a strong desire for the battalion chiefs to be more engaged and more involved in the daily goings on within the organization, and keeping up with growth within the community, recognizing that there is a lot of growth happening and wanting to stay ahead of that. I will point out that toward the bottom it says gossip and self-implosion. Gossip is a problem in the fire service pretty much anywhere in the United States. And oftentimes firefighters will tend to eat their own in the gossip that they share, and that's what causes the self-implosion. And I thought that it was an important recognition on their part. Next slide is opportunities, and that is hiring and firing new employees, mostly hiring new employees, but making sure that if you end up hiring someone who is not a good fit, that they be terminated to make sure that the organization stays healthy. There was a lot of comments in the opportunity section that kind of reinforces that concept. Next is threats. Concern about the potential for the Washington Surveying and Rating Bureau rating to decline. Morale, individualism, and divisiveness, which again gets back to the accountability comment. And kind of 2/3 of the way down the list, it says losing the fire chief, upper administrative change, the city manager, and the city council. There's a recognition by the line folks that all of the top level of the organization, fire chief, city manager, city council, that it is a very healthy dynamic with all of those folks providing leadership for the organization. And there's a great deal of concern about any churn that happens as a result of losing the fire chief, losing the city manager, or losing council members through elections. Next slide. I provided an overview of the 4 major initiatives that the firefighters spent the 2 days working on. Department Cohesion was the first initiative, and these are the 4 goals that were identified under Department Cohesion. There are literally dozens of objectives under each one of these goals, but I didn't want to spend all the time on those details, and they're included in your packet. But promoting department solidarity and recognizing that A shift versus B shift versus C shift versus D shift is not a healthy dynamic. And so they actually identified steps to take to improve that solidarity, and including the shift change interactions, and making sure that they try to stay ahead of the gossip and the rumor mill by providing accurate information to the body and conducting the cross-shift training. Next slide, please. The next initiative is community outreach, which is really focused on partnering with the community to a greater extent. Communications with the community can always be improved, and they recognize that, and they've identified objectives to achieve that. The goal of celebrating fire service traditions with community involvement, an example of what that might mean is it's a tradition in the fire service that when a new fire engine is purchased and it's ready to be placed into service, it's a tradition to park it in the front of the fire station, and the crew and the community come out and in like an open house and get on the front of the fire engine and literally push the fire engine into the truck bay of the fire station. They want the community to be involved and engaged in those traditions, as well as they want to be involved in the community's activities and the community's traditions. And then, of course, enhancing interaction with non-English speaking or English as second language groups within the community. Next slide, please. Initiative 3, operational readiness, is really where the rubber meets the road. Focus on technology and enhancing the technology that the organization relies on. Focusing on training, that's the technical competence piece. Again, focusing on response times in response to the feedback that they got from the citizens. Making sure that they've got the right equipment. Absolutely maintaining the class 3 rating by the Washington Surveying and Rating Bureau. And a new goal that's been added is updating the master plan. The master plan that was done in 2016 was really intended to be a guide for community growth for the next 10 years. However, in that intervening time, your community is experiencing explosive growth, and your comprehensive plan was not published at the point, or this most recent one was not published at the point in time that the master plan was done. So there's a desire to update the plan to reflect the new growth projections from the comprehensive plan for the city. Next initiative. Professional development. This is them focusing on them and improving themselves, creating a succession plan for leadership at all levels of the organization, focusing on identifying what I call the lily pads that they have to step on to move from firefighter to officer, officer to chief officer to the chief. And all of those steps need to be identified, and they've identified objectives to accomplish that. And then improving the evaluation process. They believe that the process is, I feel like I'm being rushed, but appropriately. The evaluation process needs to be tailored more specifically to the fire department, and that there's efforts that need to take place to get the paramedics to improve their retention and job satisfaction. And with that, I'll open it up for questions.
I'm sorry. I didn't have my mic on. Very extensive strategic plan, and a lot of time and effort went into this. And I sure appreciate going through this and seeing all the comments. Council, anybody have any comments they'd like to share?
I will just offer that the other day I stopped by the news station, I think it's 83 over here on Sandifer and 68. Rang their doorbell, it's actually working, that's good. Said hi, welcomed them to the neighborhood. Obviously, given COVID, wasn't able to go in and tour the facility, but they were just as excited to have us. And to this gentleman's point, you know, the push in, those types of community engaging activities. In speaking with the gentleman there, he certainly was interested, and it sounds like that's echoed throughout the entire building, to just become, you know, not just a building that serves us, but part of the true community once we can have that kind of open house. So I'm looking forward to obviously the virtual ceremony, but also the in-person where we can say hi and welcome them. So thank you all for your service to our community and keeping us safe. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Serrano. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Maloney.
Yes, Mr. Maloney.
Yeah, so I did actually read through the whole thing. I was going to skim it. That was my plan. I was just going to like flip through a couple pages, and it's really well written. The information's really awesome. I wish more organizations in general did this, not just at the city level, but, you know, in my professional life as well, because it's just such a great breakdown. And, you know, the thing that stood out to me the most when I was looking through kind of the responses from our fire department was actually on page 20 of this, which is figure 7, training and professional development opportunities, and where there was some, you know, significant, you know, relatively significant amount of people that were saying that there's, you know, there's not necessarily enough professional development program isn't fully there. And what stood out to me was not that it was not that there was a big negative. There's always going to be weaknesses in any program. But one, that it was the only one I think I saw that there was such a significant amount of negative comments, but also that we have so many of our firefighters and staff that are interested in being promoted through the agency, that they're not just interested in what they can do for themselves and then, for a short-term gain or anything like this. That's a conversation about seeing that they want to continue to grow with the organization and be a bigger and more prominent part of it. And that I think really speaks volumes to the opportunity we have, given the age distribution of our staff and how that's looking. So, I mean, honestly, this report was really heartening to me. The progress we've made on a number of things, I think, was really telling. Kind of some of the comparisons between the last one, and this one. I mean, I'm thrilled. I know we've invested and we care as a city council and as a community so much about our fire department, and we can see that playing out through both the community's comments in the surveys for this, as well as the comments from the fire department staff itself. So, big kudos to Chief Gear for all the hard work he's done. I think I hope I can speak for all of us council members when I say we're so supportive, and we're so glad that you see it and you see that we can help be part of the making sure that you have the resources that you need to do your job. So I'll certainly echo my fellow council member Serrano's point of, just thank you for your service and all you do for our community. I'm so excited I'm so excited about what you do, and I think this report really helps highlight that.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Yes, I'm sure the sentiment goes throughout the council. Go ahead.
Just real quick, I will not take too long. Just want to reiterate what my fellow council members have already mentioned, and kudos for the excellent report in highlighting the improvements, and can't wait for the virtual tour. Hopefully can sneak in there and get a real tour. But kudos to everyone, Chief Gear, your staff, everyone involved. Thank you so much for this report. Appreciate it. And stay safe out there. Again, same as all the appreciation as my fellow council members. Stay safe.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas. All right, well, thank you for that report, and continue the great job. And again, appreciate all you guys do for our communities. All right, next we'll go to item D, ask Pasco in the city's new non-emergency community and engagement system update. City Manager Zabel.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and I'll kick this off. So, and I first want to kick it off. This is an effort that council had been asking us to look at, and staff took some initiative. And I want to especially recognize our finance director, who you wouldn't expect to be taking on the 311, basically, our non-emergency community engagement system, but it's a project she was really excited about, wanted to take on. So Richa Sigdell was kind of the team leader on this, but April Colwell in our office spent a lot of time on it, worked across all the departments, helping staff understand where it was going. Angela Pashon, our senior management analyst, and John Funfar, and we have representatives from every department that was involved in this. The success of this project really depends on not only how it works and how it interfaces with the public, but also how it's accepted by staff and how staff's going to follow through on our end. I mean, it does us no good to have a great portal into the city to deliver a concern or a comment if we don't have a good system to turn that around and get it back out to the public with a timely response. And so that's something that I know a couple of the council members, I think a few of them have been working with our beta group, and they can quit sending test messages now, right? So it's working pretty well, and we've just recently been able to incorporate the courts even. And so all departments and at least two of the branches of government, the courts run our GAP program, our graffiti action program. And so we're ready to kick this off. And so tonight we want to walk through this with the council and whatever public's listening and then you'll see more of a major campaign to get the word out and get people using it. And the benefit of that, of course, is going to be quicker, faster responses. It's going to get quicker to the people that are actually working out those types of issues, and then a quicker response from those folks instead of going through different layers of the city, or perhaps the wrong department to the right department, back to them. So John Funfar has graciously accepted the responsibility of taking the project from here through the implementations, latter parts of the implementation and the maintenance stages. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to John.
John? Thank you, City Manager Zabel. Mr. Funfar.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight we'll be showing you the 311 app as mentioned. Yes, currently the app is available on the various Apple and Android stores, but so obviously I want to thank Councilmember Maloney in particular for being one of our guinea pigs, so to speak, and helping us out testing this one. But also it's available on the internet generally, and what you're seeing on your screen right now is the website for that, and I'll be connected to the city website starting next week. So right here you see this lovely picture of Chihuahua Park, and you have various links. This also appears on the app as well, where you can pay your utility bill. You can look at current and open positions with the city, get it up to date on the latest city news and city events, and of course our great Parks Department. But mostly what we're going to show you tonight is how to submit a request. So down at the bottom of the screen, there's some links where you have your own account and you can look up, but let's go ahead and submit a request. And here you'll see request report type, and we are going to select, make sure I can say, an animal complaint. And we're going to say, hey, we have a loose animal. Where's the request. This can be also when you're on the app, location services, so it will automatically update. But since we'll just go ahead and say right here on the corner, tell us more details, description, just type in your complaint. So we'll just say loose, if I can type tonight, loose dog running in the street. I'm trying to lean over and talk at the same time. So there's a description. Let's go back to the request and make sure we locate it correctly on the map. And as you can see, this is a map, and we're going to say right here at, oop, that's not City Hall. There's City Hall. And there we go. It also allows you to add a picture or videos or an audio even, and whether or not you want to keep this request confidential. So, and before I do that, and before I get our animal control folks looking for this dog, I just want to make sure I mark this as a test. So, and then you can go ahead and hit submit. And hopefully, thank you. And you can close that. So actually, this is Reach's account, and as you can see, she's made a lot of complaints lately. Not really. She's been busy testing. So you can check on your complaints that you've made and their statuses, as you can see here. And basically, this is your complaints or your requests in the system. And as I mentioned, you can see the current status. And hey, we have a new service request comment. So this is connected to the back end. So staff, whoever is assigned to that, will get a notice saying, hey, you know, there's this brand new request that you need to check out. So That is a very quick look at the front end of the system. And as mentioned, this will be announced next week as available, even though it's, like I said, currently available, but we'll get the word out next week. We were trying to get some word out this week, but just given now with the mass vaccination site, which we'll talk about a little bit later, wanted to actually give that some more space, since that seems to be taking up a lot of the news cycle at the moment. But starting next week, we'll get the word out formally to the press, and hopefully get a lot of downloads for this new app. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Richa, who's going to show you the staff or back end portion of the app.
Thank you, John. So John, as a resident, just submitted a request about a loose animal, and how that shows up for the staff overall is what we call this console. If I refresh this, I should be able to see what John had recently submitted, but actually I know that I will not be able to, and there's a specific reason for that. What we're trying to do with this application is also to educate and give more information to our residents. And the loose animals are actually handled by our Animal Control Authority. So you as a resident who has submitted this request would get a message back that says, please contact Tri-Cities Animal Control Authority at this email or this phone number. So you would be able to actually contact them. Same things with information that is fairly standard that we could just send you an email, or rather than us having to go in and enter the same information over and over again. Like, for example, we get a lot of questions, especially in April timeframe, of when the irrigation starts, or in October, when does it stop? And so you have an option in here of irrigation start and stop dates that you submit it. We can see it, but we don't have to respond to it because we've set up the system in such a manner that you get the information immediately. So there are certain instances like that. But overall, something like a pothole, we do want to see, we do want to act upon. These are not standard messages. So we see this, as you can see, there's a map here, especially our graffiti abatement team that has been using this tool has talked about how it has made their life a little bit easier in that they can see where the maps are grouped, and they can go and act on that specific area. And overall, as a staff, we see this. We can see that Mr. Maloney, for example, has submitted a pothole request. So I'm just going to click on that. And this would get routed to our Public Works Department.
Okay. Excuse me, Director Richa. I believe is it Chief Gear? Chief Gear, are you online?
Sorry about that. Yeah, sorry.
Could you put it on mute, please? Okay, go ahead. Thanks. Sorry about that.
Of course. And so we're able to see, as you can see, he's submitted a picture with it. This is great. We are able to see exactly where it is. There's a map. And we're able to see information because Mr. Maloney, I hope you do not mind me using your example here, but Mr. Maloney has an account, and we're able to see exactly how we can contact him if we have any specific questions. And then it also gives you who it is assigned to as a staff or a department, and what the current status is. And this is the message that is a canned message. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And it also gives you, in many instances, a phone number that you can contact if there's anything emergent, more of an emergency that you need to call us on, but also email address as well. So this is something that our residents would receive when they submit a request. And whenever we make an update, be it any comment that I might make here of, thank you for your submission, we're working on this pothole, or it's going on our work list, for a spring when we usually fill our potholes, whatever it might be, you'd be able to see that response. And for that reason, we would really encourage our customers, our residents, to create an account with us so that you're getting updated for things that you might want to hear back on. Now, there might be many things where you just want to let us know and do not want to hear back. You can submit service requests to us or contact us anonymously, and that is totally fine. The only drawback of that is that you wouldn't be able to, you would just have to kind of wait to see when that work will be done. You might not know that it's going on a work list. Or, for example, with graffiti, there are certain times of the year with temperature that we're not able to clean up the graffiti. Things like that you might not be aware of and might be thinking, well, what is the city doing? I have submitted this 3 months ago. So we highly encourage all of our residents to create an account. If you can use the app with your phone, it's very easy to use. And also for our non-English speakers, if you have your phone on Spanish, the whole app directly translates to Spanish. And we see, I will show you some of my Spanish submissions here. The whole interaction happens in Spanish. So, for example, you're able to see all of the requests here, and the request back to you would be in Spanish as well. And any of the actions that the system does or any of the communication that we do would be in Spanish as well. Similarly, if you use Google Translate, that can translate languages up to 140 languages, which will work on this system overall. Yeah, we're ready to go at this point. I would really like to thank a lot of our city staff who have worked on testing this. This is just 261 of my unread system requests, and somebody on the other end has had to deal with that service request. And similarly, it's multiplied in many different places, and also all of our pilot users as well. It's not easy to use a new system and to volunteer and give their time for free, and also have that patience and give us feedback. We greatly appreciate it.
All right.
And if you have any questions, John and I are here.
Well, thank you very much for that, Council. Any comments or questions? Appreciate Mr. Councilmember Maloney for helping out here. Anybody have any comments or questions?
It's Councilmember Maloney. I'll be brief, but I'll be honest, this app has been awesome to use. My wife and I love to walk around the neighborhood, walk downtown, walk around, and we, of course, we see a lot of graffiti, a lot of potholes, a lot of damaged sidewalks or overgrown sidewalks with vegetation. And just being able to pull up our phone real quick, snap a picture, tag it on a GPS, start walking again while we put in some very minimal information. Seriously, maybe 2 minutes to submit something. And we've done, my wife and I have probably done 50 plus submissions, not test submissions, but real submissions of here's an issue. Here's a car parked in front of a fire hydrant that may endanger the safety of people as the fire department has to work around that. Here's a sidewalk overgrown with tackweed that is right next to the Boys and Girls Clubs and right next to the school. And I know kids are walking along that sidewalk all the time. Really easy to use. Good feedback from people. I mean, the response back and forth in the city to be able to see when something's resolved. Fantastic. Just as an end user, I'm not really, I can't speak at all to the back end, nor do I want to, but the staff's we've been able to walk around and see the graffiti being cleaned up. We've been to get the response that yes, the vegetation was cleaned up. The property owner, did the responsible thing, hired someone to go and clear all that out there in front of the business. So it's made my neighborhood already just a little bit bigger, and I can't wait until more people are using it and we get to see that better response all the way across the community. Obviously, I'm a huge advocate of this, so just my message to I guess John would be, if you need me to create a couple short videos showing how I use it or just talking about it a little bit, happy to be part of that, because this is this is one of those things where it's a little thing that can be really big, and I really hope this can be successful, because it really will make our lives, our quality of life, just so much better. So I'm excited. I can't wait till everyone else gets to try it out and be as excited as I am. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Maloney. Anyone else?
This is Councilmember Alvarado.
Yes, Councilmember Alvarado.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I would also volunteer myself to help with those videos in the Spanish version. I'm very excited about this. A lot of my questions were answered in the presentation, so thank you for that. I do have two remaining questions, and one was, I know when people make requests, a lot of times they're not specific enough. So, for instance, with a loose dog in a, a lot of folks would say, hey, well, who's going to look after this? But I think, I don't know if there's some probing or some, I guess, some way to direct folks that are putting in requests to be specific, so that it will help staff be able to know what they're speaking about. I don't know if there's any kind of that, or if there's kind of a back and forth that they're able to have within the app. I didn't get to see too much of that.
Yes, we are definitely able to communicate via the app, which is really good for us. First of all, it creates a trail that is not just accessible or living in somebody's email, and hence if that person is not available, other staff are not able to answer the question or have to kind of dig in. So the app or the website, the tool itself allows for that back and forth conversation. Our hope is that the way that the app itself is set up to collect information like the map, if you're just contacting us, map is not required. But if it's an item where we really do want the location information, you cannot submit without a map or an address being provided. Similarly, as we were going through our pilot testing, one of the things that we realized with our graffiti is that it is very helpful to have a picture, because one location might have multiple graffitis, sometimes hidden. So if our staff know exactly what they're looking for, they can make sure that they can take care of what our resident was reporting, but then also other items that they can see in the location as well. So definitely, to answer your question, we're able to do a lot of back and forth and ask questions. The only place where we would not be able to do that is if requests are submitted anonymously, and that would be the only challenge.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I think this is definitely superior to the E-Track it because of that. My second question was, I know there's folks who are weary of making these requests because they, let's say someone said it's a code enforcement issue. The party who was, I guess, turned in could do a records request and find out who did the inquiry. Is that the case, or how do we are able to help people through that process?
One of the best ways to remain anonymous would be to submit the whole request anonymously, which is outside of your account. So if you do have those concerns, then that is what I would recommend our residents do. And there's a mechanism. You do not have to have an account to submit a request.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvarado. And there's still somebody with a mic that's not muted. If you could please mute that, please.
This is Mayor Pro Tem Barajas.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Barajas, go ahead.
Director Richa, just wanted to say thank you. You actually answered my question before I asked. It was about the being anonymous when making a report. And so thank you for mentioning that they do not need to have an account to keep that report anonymous. It seems that there was a concern about making a report anonymous but linked to an account, so you would still know who it was. But thank you for that. And I did play with it a little bit in Spanish just to make sure it functioned. And I appreciate the explanation that the settings on the phone needed to be in Spanish. So for the Spanish users, I support Councilmember Alvarado in doing those videos in Spanish to explain that to our community, and I would help, but I think he's got this. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I can see this being a big help because a lot of people will come to the council member, and this will relieve a lot of delay in getting it to you guys. So yes, I can see this being a big plus, and appreciate all the work that went into it. So Director Richa and John, thank you for your time and effort in this, and everybody who's been involved, and hopefully we can get it going. All right, thank you.
Mayor, may I ask one question before we move on from this item?
Absolutely, go ahead, Councilwoman Roach.
Director Sigdell, is this, just to take it in a different direction, can we use this technology to register for Parks and Rec programs?
We not at this time, but we did make sure that we have the Parks and Rec program highlighted on the front page. So you will see on our home page of the app itself, and as well as the website, we have our Parks and Recreation link, and it does take you to all of the information regarding our Parks and Recreation program. But at this point, we do not have a direct way of signing up for programs via the app itself.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman Roach. All right, well, thank you very much. Next, we'll go on to one more item, the last item of the night, other than a couple of other discussions, is the ordinance PMC Amendment Title 20. Director White, are you on the line?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to briefly explain to council that this item involves a revision to the Pasco Municipal Code that has to do with the composition of the Historic Preservation Commission. The city staff is recommending that the city council follow the Department of Archaeological and Historical Preservation guidelines from Washington State that require that one of the Historic Preservation Commission members be a qualified professional. And that's defined as you can tell by the ordinance. The city code, PMC, requires that two are required to be professionals as defined by the Pasco Municipal Code. And of course, the intention of this is that it makes filling vacancies on the commission much more simple. As council is probably aware, the Historic Preservation Commission enhances efforts both for individual property owners.
I don't blame you. This shouldn't be too much longer.
Excuse me, Mr. White. Excuse me, Mr. White. Mr. Gear, is that you? It's unmuted, or do we know who's? Do we know who that is, John?
I believe it's Mr. Roski, Mayor.
Chief Roski? Oh, it's muted now. Okay, all right. Sorry about that, Director Wright. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I just wanted to stress that the Historic Preservation Commission, the HPC, assists with individual property owners' efforts toward historic preservation and also towards the larger citywide efforts toward historic preservation. And as council probably knows, the city received an AWC award just this past year for the efforts related to the historic documentation that the HPC CED staff and Mr. Funfire coordinated with, and received an AWC Award of Excellence. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, and staff would recommend the council favorably consider this minor code amendment.
Thank you, Director White. Any questions or comments from council? Well, I think we can, if there's no objections, I would like to move this forward. As we all know, it's a little difficult to get this requirement met. So yes, I would agree, Mr. White, to go ahead and move forward unless the council has any objections to it. Okay, then we can look forward to moving that and seeing that in the agenda item for next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. White. And next we'll go on to miscellaneous council discussion. City Manager Zabel, you want to start it off?
Yes, Mayor, just bring one item this evening, and that's to introduce Chief Gear to talk a little bit about the mass vaccination site that he and the other members of the regional incident management team have been working very hard to set up over the last week, and had their first very successful day today. I don't really want to belabor this, so I'll just go right into the chief's report. As I've sent council a number of emails to try to keep you updated over the weekend and today, as well as the 500 or so people shuffled through there over several hours. But I want to acknowledge the chief's leadership and the commitment of the team out there. We did have some opportunity to go out there and meet some of them. It's representative of all the local agencies, fire districts and cities across the Tri-Cities, and the council and the community can be, I think, very proud of what's been accomplished. And with that, Chief Gear.
Yep. So I'll apologize first by saying you can see my kitchen in the background, and I was talking to my wife about just getting a toasted cheese sandwich before I went to bed. I forgot to mute my mic. So I'll start with that. I assume you guys can all hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you just fine. And you're okay
all right.
With your cheese sandwich.
I just got home. Council meeting was already in progress when I got home. So we did get through our 500 today. Had a few bumps. I think John has a video up here he'd like to show, and we'll go ahead and start with that. That's pretty much how it looked by about 10 o'clock today. We moved 500 people. It's not necessarily 500 cars. It was about 350 cars because there was more than one person in some of the vehicles. We are going to make some changes tomorrow morning. We found that we had a bottleneck at the vaccination tent, which is that yellow striped tent on the left. Registration, which we thought was going to be the bottleneck on the right, was not. And so we're going to switch that around a little bit and do vaccinations in that white tent. I think that's going to speed it up. We did get through 500 vaccinations between 12:30 and 6:30 this evening. You probably noticed a lot of negative publicity about the registration ahead of time. No one told us about that from State Department of Health. I saw it at 9 o'clock this morning that people were pre-registering, and we didn't know what to do with that. And we had made a decision that it was first 500, first come, first served, because we had gotten no direction from State Department of Health about the pre-registration program they had going on. Nothing at all. I spent 2.5 hours on the phone with them this evening, just before this, trying to straighten that out. And starting tomorrow, we'll only accept people that are pre-registered, and we'll turn drive-ins away. And they pre-registered today, without our knowledge, almost 700 people for the site for tomorrow. And they're having to back that off to 500. So there's still some communication issues that we've got to work through. Department of Health is getting a lot of mandates that are difficult to fulfill. But overall, we had a good day. We got 500 injections in arms today for the first day with the National Guard doing this. I think we cleaned up a lot of stuff. In our after-action review tonight, We definitely came up with some improvements that will be initiated tomorrow. Many of us will be there at 5 or 6 tomorrow morning to get the rest of that stuff done and keep moving people through. We have a bit of a challenge to move 2,925 vaccines through by 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So we're going to have to significantly step up the pace on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday morning with the National Guard. And then they will have Sunday, Monday off. And then we'll go back at it Tuesday because we want to get a Saturday day open for people that are not able to get there during the weekday. There's also some, I don't know the right term, equity issues about the group we're supposed to be vaccinating, which is the 1B group, which is over 65s, and their lack of access to internet or registering online. And we've got to get more messaging out about that because some of them just can't do that. And we have to figure out how to get them registered through the 211 system or the 1-800 system the health department has. So it was a challenging day, but we got 500 shots in arms today, and that was the leader's intent. Me being the leader, my intent was to get 500 shots in arms today, and we'll deal with the rest of the stuff as we go through each day. So with that, if there's any questions from council.
Well, thank you, Chief Gear. Anybody want to comment?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions for you, Chief. Councilman Serrano. First, 2925 is an odd number. If you can tell us how you arrived at that. And then the second question is, if this is a two-part vaccine, is the intent essentially to do one now and then the same people next week, or how does that factor into the process? If you can speak to that, thank you.
I can. It's a little more complicated than that. 2925 is what the state allocated to us, and that was in Pfizer vaccines. We actually acquired 500 Moderna vaccines today or last week to start today because our Pfizers were not even scheduled to show up until later today, and they did. And we have them stored securely, and we'll start running Pfizer tomorrow. Pfizer's a lot more labor intensive because we have to cut it with 10% sodium bicarb. And that's why you get more than 5 vaccines out of a 5 vaccine bottle with Pfizer. But it will slow down. It's gonna affect ability to deliver that Pfizer vaccine. The number is just how it's packaged, council member, and it comes in that number, and that's one of the things we're struggling with. If we stay at 500 a day between now and Saturday, which is what our current schedule is, and then to be down on Sunday and Monday, which is what the Guard needs, National Guard needs it 2 days down, we have to increase the throughput on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we have to be out of Pfizer's by 2 o'clock on Saturday, or we waste them. So we've got to increase that throughput between now and Saturday. So it's just the numbers of how they're packaged, and there's nothing we can do about that. Does that answer your question?
That does. That certainly answers the first question. I greatly appreciate that. And then the second question was, again, if this is a 2-part shot, essentially next week or the following week, would you see the same people coming back? I guess I'm thinking of the conglomeration of people. You know, if we have the same people coming back to get shot number 2, we're going to essentially take 2 weeks to vaccinate 2925. Is that? I'm not sure if you can clarify.
Excellent question. And nobody from the national level to the state level to locals has dealt with that. The emphasis right now is to get that first shot in, because that's a 65% protection rate. nobody knows what's going to happen with a lot of the second shots and how that compounds with other people coming in with the first shot. And so we're having to figure this out day by day. And we had some people that came through today for their second shot. Now the Pfizer vaccine is a 21-day on your second shot, plus or minus 2 days, either 2 or 3 days, either side of that. The Moderna is a 28-day, plus or minus, again, a couple days on either side of that. There's word coming out from CDC that you can mix Pfizer and Moderna. But, you know, I read Facebook last night and they didn't agree with that. So I'm waiting for the real news to tell me what is actually true about whether you can mix Pfizer and Facebook, or excuse me, Pfizer and Moderna. You know, I haven't heard, I've not had anything from CDC that tell us we can do that. If people come through for their second right now, we will give them a second. And we have some Modernas set aside. So if they were a Moderna the first time and we're doing Pfizer, we can still give them a Moderna second. Does that answer that? I'm sorry, council member, but it is a really complicated thing.
No, and I recognize my question is overly simplified. I think, you know, to the point you made earlier, first, thank you for your efforts, and thanks to all those who are there. I mean, this has to be a monumental task, but to your point, I think this is an ever-evolving situation, and the more we can at least speak openly, and sometimes the best answer is we just don't know. And unfortunately with this, everyone wants, you know, an answer yesterday, and we're still taking till the weekend to figure it out. Not saying that you guys are delaying by any means, but it's a complicated process and ever-evolving. So again, thank you for taking this on. I certainly wouldn't want to, but again, I reiterate the point. If we can help in any way, let us know. But thank you for, you know, the transparency. And I think hopefully this is good for the public to hear kind of where everything's going and what you all are trying to do to accomplish this as quickly as possible. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Yes, this is Councilman Milne. I had a quick question.
Go ahead.
You hear about like the vaccination cards. Like if you get it, is it? Do you guys actually hand that out, or is it just like a piece of paper that shows that you know you have your vaccination? Can you kind of clarify? I mean, I hear all these different things on the web that it's going to be mandatory or not. I mean, can you kind of clarify that, or what you guys are giving out when people do get their shots?
Yes, they do get a vaccination card. Councilman Milne, it was kind of funny when I had my second vaccination a few weeks ago, and the nurse handed me my card. She said, "Okay, here's your new passport." And I thought, "Oh, huh? Hadn't really thought about that. I guess I'd probably better put this in my wallet or maybe put it in my passport thing." But that's what it is. Yeah, you get a card that says you've had your 2 vaccinations. And for countries or travel where you want to go, that is your new passport right now.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Milne, and Chief Gear. We have all the confidence that you're doing all you can, and appreciate your efforts, and know you're the best man for the job, along with all the people that are supporting you. I did see that Mr. Scherer was on the local news tonight and giving his report, and just, I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing out there. Thank you for that. All right. Well,
I just want to
go ahead.
Mayor, for a second, I just want to thank council for supporting us to be able to leave our regular jobs at the city and step up and participate and stuff like that. That doesn't always happen, and I think it's important from a community. And if we're going to get through this thing, everybody's got to dig in and do what we can to move this along.
Yep, you're welcome. And, you know, this is important to Pasco as much as it is for the rest of the Tri-Cities. And I think I can speak for the council to say that we just want to do our part, and we'll do whatever it takes to make our community safer. And it's just fortunate for us that we have the right people to do this job. So thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. All right, with that, we'll move along to the next item, which is an executive session, and we do have a need for an executive session tonight. The purpose of the executive session is to discuss litigation or potential litigation with legal counsel. The executive session is expected to last approximately 20 minutes and will be attended by the city manager, the city attorney, the deputy city manager, the public works director, and at the conclusion of the executive session, I will reconvene the meeting of the city council and entertain any action desired by the council and adjourn the meeting. So with that, it is 9:15. We'll be heading into executive session. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, and you're welcome to stay for us to come back and adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Hi, this is City Clerk, and the executive session is going to continue for approximately another 10 minutes. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back from executive session. It is 9:51. Thank you for attending the meeting, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.